but it's about time we figure out our final participant. Is it going to be PartinG or is it going to be Probe? Either way, SEA is going to have some representation. But to get us into the action, it's time to throw it across to our casters, BeoMulf and Nate, for another best of 5.
Nate, this is the matchup that I have been looking forward to. I think everyone watching this tournament
right?
been looking
Seriously.
forward to, right?
It has to be. It has to be, Beo. I'm getting all jacked up. We got ourselves just a quick second of breather, get a quick water, get a quick freshen, get a quick breath of fresh air. And I mean, anytime that you see PartinG's name, look, I know we have a lot of people watching that probably know him from StarCraft, but if you don't know him, he's not just an amazing competitor. He plays the role of jester at times. He's a hilarious guy who plays super active styles and is just generally one of the most fun competitors to watch. And the only complaint that you could possibly have is that you don't have a camera on him when the game ends, because he's just a funny guy. He's really got great energy. And Probe is a player that has just been doing so well trajectory wise here. I think the matchup is really nice, but it's hard not to get excited seeing PartinG's name. And this late in the tournament, the expectation for him to keep making progress, I feel like it's got to be there, Beo.
Yeah, he is seed 1A Alpha Prime, I guess. There is no one that has been as good at Stormgate as PartinG has been. He's sitting with a ludicrous 96% win rate on his main account on ladder. He's sitting on a 94% on another account. Like, he has been dominant across every single thing. But I talked to Theory again going into this series because, hey, he's like the top North American Stormgate player. He's a good guy. And, he's involved with the team that just signed PartinG with Aftermath. And he pretty much told me, look, PartinG's incredible, but Probe, if there's one player that has really good Vanguard versus Infernals, who probably is the best player in the world in this, it is currently Probe. His Vanguard versus Infernals is the best in the world, at least in Theory's opinion. So if there was a player that was going to take PartinG down and was going to be able to withstand these 4-minute Doombringer drops, these 7-minute Imp gaunt timings that PartinG's been going for, well, it's the man in red. It's Probe.
Yeah, we got a heck of a match coming up here, and this one is just going to be awesome to see. That early scout harass. Not surprised to see Probe is going to be one of those guys that will be maximizing as much as possible. He's someone that's got a very deep knowledge of the current meta, someone who's playing a pretty crazy amount of games. So this is not going to be a series where we see him kind of freestyling it, as much as I'm expecting him to have something ready to go, have something special cooked up for us here, because PartinG is not an opponent that you can just walk into a match and say, yeah, I can just beat PartinG super casually. It's like, no, he's not only has he had put up some of the most amazing macro RTS games competitively that we've ever seen, but some of the best early game crazy cheesy ones as well. In fact, he's pioneered quite a few of those strategies over the years too. So lots of people have been, I think you mentioned this as well, following the strategies that he's been doing in Stormgate, particularly with some of the Doombringer plays early on and the 8 gaunts, etc. So there's a lot of inspiration people have been taking from him, because, well, everything he does, he figures it out. He's got a special mind, and he is incredibly talented in these games.
Yeah, the other thing as well, though, is PartinG has not been streaming. PartinG has not been posting replays anywhere. PartinG has not been showcasing what he does. Yes, Probe probably knows what PartinG does pretty well, because, again, they're at that high level. If you're in the top 20 or so, you're running into PartinG's accounts and playing against him. But for the most part, PartinG has been hiding builds. He has been hiding strategies. He has not been public about what he's doing. So even as we say, yeah, you know what? He's innovating things. He's running forward. This conclave, shrine, conclave idea is kind of the new way you open up against Vanguard, at least the way a lot of players are going for it. The thing is that PartinG has been hiding what he does more than anyone else. Probe's made, he's upped his subscriber count on YouTube by 1,000 subscribers by dropping all these Vanguard builds, which is great. It's building the community, but it does give PartinG a lot more to study about Probe than Probe ever can have to study PartinG.
Yeah, that felt like the first interesting part of the qualifiers last week, because it was so close to when that period of time had opened that people could be posting outside the NDA. If you hadn't been following the online cups, the couple of sanctioned ones that have been going around, that there's some content from during that week too. but it's not like there's this huge breadth of VODs that you can look into, or you can say, oh, when's the last time Probe played in a tournament? Oh, I'll just look at that. It's like, no, not only there aren't tournaments, but also if there was one, there's been 2 or 3 patches released, right? Since whatever you're looking at was necessarily relevant. So it don't really have the same ability to just pick and choose things from their gameplay that you see. Everybody is constantly adjusting. It's almost too soon to really cement down any particular playstyle, because what's good and what's not has some pretty wild swings when you still have, you know, entire factions or tiers of units that are missing from the game that we're only going to continue to learn about and see how they impact the meta as we know it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see here already. We got Double Lancer on the map trying to just maybe snipe some resource camps. Is he gonna get it? It's so hard to tell. I don't think he did though. But at the very least, he's keeping the Fiend setup down. And by the way, we talk about a 4-minute drop. This Doombringer was made at 3:30. This is even faster than what we saw PartinG doing against Curlew in that round of 16. And what do we got here? We got a couple Lancers set up properly to defend. There's going to be a turret on the way, so this should be manageable. But what this does right now is this allows PartinG to, I believe the AoE term is boom. This allows PartinG to go and take the map behind this. Probe cannot exist on the map. He's got to deal with this. His production's not going to be there in time, and for now it's a little annoying, right? He's trying to get a couple of these bobs on low ground to the high ground. But again, what he's doing here, he's keeping Probe back at home. He's not allowing him to do whatever he would like, and this is a lot of damage. But it looks like the repair of the overcharge for now, Nate, is going to keep things alive.
And that's the worst part about it, is that he has to use the overcharge in order to hold it, because he doesn't have the anti-air capabilities. He doesn't have anything that can really shut this down effectively, and he just picks up into the sky and he's got all of the gaunts. So how do you send anything out? And because the overcharge goes on one spot, now if he's able to plant down and you get a couple of those bounces, you get 1 or 2 good bounce shots to turn into fiends, and this can fall apart very quickly for Probe. So you see him exercising tremendous caution. Really, you can see the respect that he's showing to his competitor. He knows that PartinG's not someone he's going to be able to cut corners against and get away with stuff. But at the same time, he does still get some Lancers out to try and harass. It is mostly Gaunts at home. There is a single Shroud Stone, however, and that will be enough for PartinG to feel safe thus far. I think one more of the Lancers just kind of tried to poke in there, but didn't do too much else. Brings the drop back. Talk about if that overcharge cooldown is ready. It does get the Infest bounce on some of the Bobs, but not seeing that big snowball effect just yet either, though.
Some of these Bobs are getting pretty low, though, so they're going to get mass repaired on up. And again, it doesn't cost you anything to repair, but it is mining time that is lost. The Lancers in the low ground, high ground as well, are going to try to finally shut this down, but not PartinG is so good. Like, his drop micro is fantastic. He hasn't lost a single Gaunt thus far. Now he's going to finally lose some as he tries to maybe maximize the value as the timing. The army's getting just big enough. But what I want to know, as we see what's happening right here, we're 6 minutes in. The Doombringer's been out for about 2 minutes. It's been annoying for just about the last 2 minutes or so. Do we have the ritual shrine done? Are we going to see PartinG? He's got 4 shrines up. Are we going to see that imp timing, that imp Gaunt timing that we've just seen him do?
He's been big mini map moving on the left side. There's a lot making its way over. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what's in store here, Beo? I think you've got a better understanding of it than me, but this is a PartinG special in Stormgate, as I've heard.
Yes, the PartinG got these imps nerfed. They're still probably not nerfed enough, but they got nerfed pretty hard because he knew that 9 of them could blow up a command post. And make no mistake about it, he's got 4 shrines. This is still pretty all in. He's got 10, 12, he's got an entire Luminite line worth of him just sitting here, and see what he's doing. He's waiting for the Lancers to engage. He explodes on top of them. Probe's gonna lose the army. And I have not seen an Infernal player or a Vanguard player properly deal with this. The turret's gonna get exploded here. The Bobs are mostly gonna go down. And look at the Gaunt timing at this point. Look at the number of Gaunts at this point. There are no Lancers. There's nothing here. Probe, again, he's gonna get, I want to see this get solved. I'm sure it is solvable. But for right now, this build from PartinG just looks untouchable.
Absolutely brutal timing. He opens with the drop so fast, you don't really have much time to try and switch and prepare, go into anything else. And by the time you feel like you're just barely getting your feet set, boom, he's just hitting you with all the flame imps. And you think about it, you're like, okay, well, the workers aren't that fast, so you're not worried in this game as much about proxies or what have you. But when you have a timing like that rolls together, yeah, send everything across. It's not like he's necessarily planning to do much else after that. It works, but absolutely brutal attack timing. And if you're wondering why everybody's been excited to see PartinG play, it's because he's the guy coming up with this stuff. He's the guy that is setting the trends and opening our eyes to what people can do. And well, it definitely seems like Probe is going to have his work cut out for him in this best of 5, Beo.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are solutions. I think maybe if you get a Vulcan early, that might help because Vulcans don't take too much damage to Gaunts, and if you can maybe gun the imps down, maybe that seems expensive. There are ways. I'm being told that apparently there are some solutions that have been put up on YouTube and things. I just haven't seen it yet. So that's game one. It does mean that Probe is gonna have the loser's pick advantage. He's gonna be able to pick whatever game he wants to play on for game number 2. And Nate, I don't think we're going to see Broken Crown. That's got a somewhat of a wide open, or we can't, right? Because that's already been picked. But do you think we see Titan's Causeway? I doubt it. This is probably just going to be Secluded Grove for game 2, right?
Yeah, it feels like it makes sense. We either get Secluded Grove as the pick for the Vanguard player, or the Infernal player is going to want to go to Jagged Maw, right? So we kind of have a mini meta in that way, just with the number of maps that we have available. So something to keep in mind, but I'm not I don't know. Do you think Jagged Maw has as much of an impact on a matchup like this where the two players are at that high of a level, or is it still enough to really have the weight to swing it, I guess is the question.
I think it's tempting to say, it's kind of 50-50 in the main event. I think Jagged Maw is very strong. I think it pigeonholes a Vanguard player enough into how they want to play that it makes it hard, right? It restricts
Fair.
Vanguard players in a way that it doesn't really restrict Infernal players. But also, I think I mentioned maybe Titan's Causeway is an option. That has apparently been removed from the map pool. So we're on a 3-map pool right now. Game 2, of course, is going to be on Secluded Grove. Probe down 1. And Nate, do we want to see a Hornet opening this game? Do we want to see some crazy Vulcan response? Like, what do you want to see out of Probe in this game too?
Okay, so if you think about it, like from as far as the process goes, if you know that there's a high likelihood that PartinG is going to do a strategy like this, it almost makes sense to go Hornet or some form of early anti-air. Just the Hornet for one reason, which is that it has the speed and the high damage for anti-air, but also the shield to deal with stuff on the ground. On some level, you have to expect that PartinG is obviously anticipating this. It's a Gaunt drop. It's mostly Gaunts. His control's been really good with them. So together with that, it's not impossible for him to out-micro or take down a Hornet build and then overwhelm on the ground. So I think about the answers of what's good at that. And then I think to myself, well, if you had a well-positioned, I don't know, maybe this is just going to sound crazy, but I'm like, if somebody's pushing you with a bunch of flame imps, if it's all this very stacked up slow melee stuff, like, is there a way that a Vulcan can be worked into this and really let that line damage shut it down? Because once it fires up, you kill imps really fast, especially off Shroud. Just watching that game, that's kind of what was going through my head. I don't know if any of that is really particularly useful, but that's part of the fun for me watching these games is thinking about, it's like, well, what is the best answer? Just going straight air, of course, they can still attack you. So there needs to be some second level of Hornet into something that can deal with the mass unit.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I do like Hornet openers. I think against an aggressive player because, well, it's an answer, first of all, to a Doombringer showing up like 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, right? You have some anti-air. Because, yeah, if you just open Lancers cannot win that fight. It is impossible. They are melee units, and that means they get very split upon Nate. The imps say, this is fine. I want to make contact with you anyways. You can't target him down ahead of time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very very nuanced relationship with the air units. As you know, this is probably the thing that I've been harping on the most because it feels like one of the toughest interactions to really get a handle on. This especially as you said, you can't necessarily manually target, right? So it can be strong, it can do well, but it's not always necessarily going to be in your hands as much as you need the other guy to make a mistake, and that affects the decision-making part of it again in such a huge way, such a big way. But it almost feels like we've had a moment to breathe, Beo. Just that it hasn't. We don't already have. I think you said it was by 3:30 he had it last game, right? The Doombringer. It almost feels like having 3 minutes to just talk about the game has been like the most downtime this whole match has had, and which obviously feels weird since we're in game 2. But it just kind of kicked off and didn't stop before.
Yeah, no, that is what PartinG's going to do. He's going to go and he's going to put as much pressure on the map as possible. He's going to run a train of imps across, and it's not quite a soul train, but it is, you know, it's close enough. It's how PartinG looks to play. But I do like the fact that Hornets are out. This does give Probe more scouting opportunity. This does give him more kind of map control opportunity. It means he can target Doombringers down. It means he can, ideally, he can knock down some of these first gaunts. And when you talk about a drop like this, it's all about those first 8 gaunts. If you lose them, well, the drop's not as powerful. So that can be a little bit annoying, but for now, it's going to be out on the map. Dog's going to return back home. Vision Camp should be in the purview of PartinG now, although Probe may try to go and steal the... Oh, he's going to steal the aura. Look at this. Look at the position. Oh, he gets it.
Gets the
he
vision.
He doesn't get the money, but this gives him so much defensive vision now, at least while the Fiend, before the Fiend's killed off. But that tells him where the Doombringer is coming from. That's actually such a big deal.
Yeah, he gets a spot on view of the direct angle that it's coming in on. Now, this is what we were talking about. So if you have the Hornet, it can attack the Doombringer while it's in the air. But the thing is, all of the gaunts can attack it, and usually you're not going to see that big shield pop until it gets very, very low. So it becomes a bit of a tough choice that needs to be made, especially if an overcharge ends up becoming necessary. So going for a little bit of the repair on it, as he does have the Bob's overcharge, but it's just barely staying alive. And with the second Hornet coming in, this is the big money play. So using the repair, Probe does beautifully, a way to at least buy himself some time, but it's not over yet. Still getting a couple Fiend spawns off, and that's that drop micro we were talking about. The drop can kind of defend itself, not completely, but just enough that PartinG just never lets up on the pressure.
He doesn't, but it's only, actually it's less than 8 gaunts in the drop right now. So if we get to like 3 or 4 Hornets, it can start to be this thing where the drop is just never going to do enough. Shield gets dropped as well, and that's expensive, right? That's an 80-second cooldown that Probe no longer has available to himself. But this Doombringer's getting so low. He's going to target it down, and it... Oh, is there enough damage? Yes, knocked it down. Okay, and yeah, there we go. Veterancy as well. The Hornet will survive. So now these, what is it? These 6 gaunts, they're something. They're not going to distract Probe nearly as much. He can maybe try to expand now. He can develop his tech. He can start to move on the map with his Hornets and be very aware of this timing push that's going to be coming out of PartinG, because while we see more conclaves on the way, it feels like we're going to see more of the same.
Yeah, it's not, I don't know if PartinG gets to a point where he feels like maybe the direction that he can take with it isn't necessarily as accessible. I like the repair turret, by the way. Put the Bob in there. Weirdly enough, I've noticed it will also repair buildings if there's no actual units to heal nearby. So I'm not really sure that actually does anything, but food for thought.
Yeah, I was going to say, does that technically speed up a building time?
I think contextually, if I had to create a use for it while we wait for these imps to walk across the map, I would say that you would probably want it the most when... Yeah, you know, I'm really not sure. I got nothing for you, Beo. The imps distracted me. The push is coming. It's time.
Yeah. You know, he's got a train. The conductor's ready. He's got, was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10? His entire natural imp line is totally committed to this push. So can you hold? That is the true question here. There's no shield available for the Hornets for probably just a little bit longer. What do we got? I think we have 3 Hornets on the map. The turret's not going to be done in time. The Gaunts, well, now there's less Hornets, and the imps are going to try to turn themselves on. They don't even have to. They don't have to do anything. They can just sit there. They're going to explode on top of this turret once again. And the Gaunt line means that these Hornets do not do enough, and Probe is dead again. We don't have a solution yet, Nate.
Yeah, you know, I feel like this is a great example of, you know, I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing, because I feel like making any suggestions here would be foolish, because the reality is nobody makes it far enough for us to even be able to see if PartinG has a second layer to this dip. You know what I mean?
Ooh, 7-layer dip sounds delicious right about now. You know, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. I haven't eaten since noon. But I don't know. I'm seeing people in chat saying that there are a couple games that actually Probe played a game. He held this build, but clearly, Nate, there is it hits just a little bit harder.
Again, I'm just imagining a Vulcan and maybe like an evac and shuffling around a little bit. I feel like there's some ways to answer the slow mass units, because the Vulcan is really good against both of those. Like they absolutely obliterate Gaunts and imps. So I don't know how much the inflamed imp would do to a Vulcan, however. So I guess I can't really. I haven't had that. I haven't faced that. It's interesting to think about, though.
Well, Nate, I can tell you just how much damage it'll do. It'll do 150. Yeah, it'll do
well, there
150
you go.
damage. No, I'm sorry. That's the Shadow Flyer damage. Never mind. I'm trying to sound smart, and instead I'm just sounding dumb. It's okay.
The Vulcan has some armor and a lot of health, so I assume that it could sustain a hit or two, but I think that by the time they would be shooting at them, they would already have wound up a little bit. It's worth mentioning in the patch this week, the Vulcan's range was increased. So one of the complaints that some people had earlier was it was a little bit difficult to actually maintain a shot on anything that you were attacking because they move out of range and the Vulcan is slow. So it's a little bit easier to maintain that now. However, it is slow, right? We don't really have the drop heavy play open. It's more about Hornet openings for Vanguard players. So maybe as we get more to drop type openings, I think the Vulcan will maybe come back a little bit. But it's hard to say because your drop would also just be chasing the other drop in that situation too. So you would still want the Hornet, but I like the Vulcan. That's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah, I'll buy that. We saw Lucifron try to do some pretty cool stuff in the first series of our broadcast today, or of your and I. Broadcast today, where he went Hornets into Vulcan drops and didn't quite work out against a Laser. Laser was just playing a really solid defensive play, but it does feel like if you have a Vulcan, and I don't know if you know what, Nate, here's the problem. I don't know if it comes out in time. I don't know if you have to cut too many corners for it, because this timing hits right at 7 minutes. You know, it hits
fast
off of the 4 minute, the 3:30 drop timing as well. So I don't know if you can get out a mech bay and a machine lab and the Vulcan and everything else in time while defending against this heavy aggression coming out of PartinG.
That also, I think, just brings us to the more logical conclusion in this situation, which I think is probably the likely one too, which is that PartinG has pretty clearly demonstrated that he's at the tippity top. He's pretty clearly demonstrated that he's got a very good grip on this game, the massive volume of games that he's played, and the fact that he's got builds that make Infernal look this good probably says more about his level of preparation, because we haven't seen everybody just insta-winning games with Doombringer drops. It's been common, but it feels more like a formality of a regular matchup rather than, you know, the end here. But we also haven't really seen many other people doing the imp play aside from PartinG either. I think it really is just got a little bit more to do with people being very bio focused in this meta. A lot of the units that they want to be out on the map with, but the flame imps are just amazing versus those. So that's always going to be the case.
Would a hedgehog opener be what you're looking for? And no, because Gaunts are still pretty good against hedgehogs. I'm like, you can kite across the map. You can kind of do like the blink stalker thing, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say PartinG's too good. We already saw the micro with the pickup on the Gaunts with the first 2 waves of the drop, where, as you called, he didn't lose any until he went in the 3rd time, and then just lost 1 and retreated. But especially on this map too, you have to keep in mind, because he was playing on the low ground position of the natural, which is not something that you can necessarily get away with on all of the other maps, because that map, you know, you talk about Secluded Grove, the natural is on the low ground. Everything's on the same plane, so it's a little bit easier with the melee units. But he really bullied him on this map last time because of the Lancer opening. So he's gone directly again for the hangar bay, and I do like this, but going to come down one more time to out controlling PartinG, and then you can't just survive this. You need to survive this while also going directly into something that can deal with the flame imp push.
Yeah, so for now we see I want to say that's a sentry post going down on the closer to the low ground as well. So with the Hornet out, with up 2 buzzsaw cannons, and with this, well, we see the Hornet here pops the shield very early, which I like, because one of the things we ran into last time is just targeting the Doombringer down on the shield. This is
beautiful.
So nice.
Look at the position they're in too. I mean,
yeah.
if he makes another Doombringer, if he can, to just send it straight across that way, maybe. Well, but he also gets a counterattack in during that. So while we're trying to sing some praises for Probe, he actually ended up losing a pretty substantial amount of his economy in the main base over there. PartinG, not one to just take the fight in a single venue, especially in that location. So buys himself a little bit of time, but how much time does he really buy himself? His Therium mining was completely shut down for a rather long stretch there. And again, we know it probably is somewhere in the tech realm, maybe, or he's just going to try and make some elaborate puzzle of turrets, but I don't think that's going to happen either. What is he building there in the natural? Is that a mech bay? It looks like a mech bay.
I mean, I do like what PartinG's doing here in part, because he's like, look, I've done the same thing. Yeah, that is a mech bay on the way. I've done the same thing 2 times in a row. You honestly didn't look that much closer to stopping it the second time than the first time, so I'm just going to keep doing it until you prove to me that you can hold on to this. So we're going to see units on the right side. The Ritual Shrine is just about done, so the workers are going to start to go and research that ability to explode on all over Probe. And what do you think comes out of this mech bait? Is it that Vulcan? Is it? There's no, you don't have a machine lab, so you can't get an Atlas out fast enough. There's zero chance for that.
I think the Hedgehog does nothing against this. It has to be the Vulcan, but you can kill a crazy amount of Gaunts and Fiends, and I do believe Imps with good Vulcan control, especially if he gets any level of ability to get out on the map. Like, that becomes a big target for them, and that gives you something to actually put a value on giving the shield to, because it can deal so much damage, unlike the Hornet, where it's like, yeah, you kind of get single unit isolation with the high DPS, but it's not enough to kill the mass of units, which is where we're headed. So I'm very curious to see what's going to come out of that base. I want to know how far forward he puts the Vulcan. I think the Vulcan should try to be at the front of the engagement. It can soak the most damage. But he needs to get a read on which side the attack comes from. I think the expectation should be from the front of the natural, but it'll be interesting to watch regardless. I think if the Vulcan isn't gatekeeping a little bit though, then the Imps will still reach their destination, which should be the primary thing to avoid.
Ooh, I like this as well. We see the bulwark upgrade there on one of those habitats, so you can go and actually keep one of these turrets alive just a little bit more. We're gonna see an effigy go down, but I think we'll see Hornet maybe just go on top of that one. First turret will fall, of course, and the effigy is still here, but again, the Vulcan is still right there. Second round, and we're gonna see, yeah, the turret falls, but the command post stays alive, and we have 2 Vulcans on the field now. We have this army that, the barracks will fall, I think. But this army that Probe has made, and the fact that the Imps were all spent on killing off 2 turrets is kind of fine.
Vulcans are not scared of Gaunts. Vulcans are not scared of Gaunts at all. And this is kind of what I had pictured in my head. I really like that he went for this, because yeah, the Flame Imps can go blow up on something, but if they don't go if they went to the opposite side of the Vulcans, naturally they were able to still blow up, but they just take out 1 turret, and there was still another repair turret in the back that could reach the Vulcan across the hangar bay, worth pointing out as well. So I don't think he could have handled this too much better. Vulcans are just great against everything except for, like, when you start running into, I don't know, lots of Magmadons, or they don't really get close, obviously, that well to the Hellborns. But head to head, they can fight pretty tough against these. That's why I like to say the evac is great for shuffling them around, because if you got both of the Vulcans on top of all of those Gaunts, they could kill all of them pretty easily too.
Oh yeah, and they got that extra range as well. It's like, yeah, as an Inferno player, all you really want, the only thing that you're really going to get that deals with Vulcans well, of course, is the Weaver. And, good news. The same structure that allows you to make your Imps explode is the same structure that unlocks Weavers for you to build. So PartinG will potentially have that option. And it'd be tempting to say, look, PartinG's got 5 shrines right now. He's got his 5th base on the way on the bottom side. His economy, despite all this, is going like gangbusters. And the answer's not really, because he committed 12 Imps to that attack. That's another 25 times 12. What is that? 200, what is that? 250 odd Luminite or something. Don't do math on stream, kids. Doesn't really work out. That's a significant amount of Therium that's committed. As oh man, 2 of these Hornets go down. It's a significant amount of Luminite.
Hornets. 2 veteran Sea Hornets go down. That's painful. He had those guys leveled up quite a few times. We have is this little back Doombringer play going around the outside the corner of the map. Overdrive hits pretty quickly, but will the Flame Imp still be able to connect and get what they want? Absolutely not. So ends up holding without too much trouble there, and there is the recall to get it back home. But you did point out, in the midst of all of this chaos, PartinG, he's taken a lot of bases behind it. But this kind of army, I'm just interested to see where it goes from here. Whether or not you think PartinG is ahead or Probe's behind, it's pretty obvious that PartinG has been playing a really strong series. But I just like the fact that we've made it past that point, and now we can see with a little bit more something else. Look at this, more Flame Imps going over towards that natural mineral line, and gets a huge detonation, but still 8 Bob's able to get back to work. So it's not the end of the world, right? You don't need 16 to saturate. You don't need 20 workers. Getting 10 for the optimal gives you a little bit of wiggle room with the losses.
I mean, this is rapidly becoming very expensive for PartinG, though. He's going, and yes, he is absolutely going and getting damage down. There's like 5 or 6 Bobs that went down. But every time he loses one of those drops, specifically if the Doombringer goes down, that's 350 Therium down the drain. That's more expensive than, say, a Hellborn, which is really nice. It's more expensive than a Magma. Like, it costs a lot for PartinG to do this, which is in part why he's on 5 shrines. Well, 6 shrines now, which is in part why he's in this situation. He is not trading cost effectively, and this army that he's making against what Probe is doing cannot trade cost effectively. So instead, he's going to try to bury him in Gaunts, in Brutes, in Imp, in these lower tech units that allow him to be constantly active on the map and constantly building these units. But again, as the game goes on, as we see more Vulcans, we see Atlases getting added in eventually, this army has a point where it will just not be very good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He already can't really contest him with this force. The only advantage that he has is because of the nature of it, he's split up. He's outside the natural, he's also outside of the third base. But he tried to contest that ramp a little bit, and I think I'm not gonna lie, it's a setup a pine after on my own heart. But Probe's third base, he has so many repair turrets over there that we're covering, and in the natural too, it just makes killing those Vulcans so freaking difficult. Yeah, he has 2 in the back over there. 1 Vulcan with the repair turret can hold a pretty absurd amount of units. I think when people try to move out on the map with them, that's where you really realize their weakness, because it's really just their speed. But if you use drops to shuffle them around, or if your opponent attacks you, getting an early Vulcan to defend some of the aggression from the Infernal players, at least for me, has worked really well, and I like seeing him in this game. But it's still hard to either PartinG transitioned into something that works, or Probe is able to build an army that just mulches through 3 or 4 waves of Brute Gaunt pretty easily, and we get a weird game number 4. But that's still going to be asking a lot. He's got quite a few Hornets, so that's his mobile answer. And I love seeing the return to Hanger Micro on the ones as they start to get a little bit low on the back. That's the best way to do it. Just got to keep in mind that air units do not path through each other. They do have air collision, so if you got them all bunched up and you try to send one back that's in the middle, it will just kind of spin around and do nothing. So just something to be aware of.
You know, Nate, that is probably the best possible change that we saw when Stormgate's or the best possible design decision that they made for Stormgate. The fact that I can't cluster like 20 Hornets on top of each other.
You can't put all your air units on one pixel so the opponent doesn't know how many you have? Wow.
It's so... And I can't attack them all at once and burst things down.
I really love strategy games where I don't have information. Those are my favorite.
Oh,
my favorite.
It makes me so happy. But anyways, PartinG is doing things that are not really making Probe all that happy right now, although Probe is cleaning up on the left side. The question, though, is I mean, that's a decent amount of Vulcans, and you got Medtech behind, probably Nanostorm as well. We got a Rampart going down there on the healing turret as well to keep the habitat alive, and this is getting structural damage done, sure, but not enough. And PartinG, he doesn't really get enough on the right side. The left side gets absolutely shellacked, and, well, now PartinG is look at the number of blue dots on the map here. PartinG is taking every single base.
Yeah, he's taking the top left ones. If he builds nothing, if he just keeps making Vulcans, then, and he doesn't go into anything to try and get these guys out on the map more, then I was going to say Hellbringers is really what you want. That they're just, or the Hellborns are absolutely amazing versus the Vulcans. Especially talk about the long windup on their attacks. The Vulcans have very, very slow speed. They have a similar weakness where that attack animation to start shooting takes a second, and then of course it winds up. So every little bit of micro the Vulcan does takes away some of its firepower. So it just doesn't have that range to get close, and this is what I was concerned about. So he uses the massive economy that we've discussed, and this is maybe the one moment of opportunity for Probe, is that there's maybe not as much anti-air. If he can get the Hornets onto all of these Hellborns, that would be an absolutely huge pickup, because that's a very expensive tier 2.5, we could call it, army out there. It's just a lot of Hellborns.
Yeah, the problem is a lot of those brutes, they turned into fiends at the end. They just said, this is fine. I'm probably not going to win. Oh, no, these Hornets are falling too. I was going to say, you know, we're not going to win this fight, or we're not going to push through. So, yeah, okay, suddenly it's 20 fiends on top of the command post, knocking those down. And luckily, this is a Vanguard player that can build the command post pretty quickly, but still, it is expensive to have to rebuild. Even still, we're looking at, what is that, 4, 5, 6 Vulcans. It's a lot. And by the PartinG's taking Probe's base on the north side. Probe had a command post there. I think it got taken down very quickly. But Probe's kind of going for a death push right now. He's got this army. He's got these units together. You know, Nate, I don't think he has the right composition right now. He's going for a death push, sure, but I don't think he pushes through. What is this? 15 or so Hellborn? Like, that is a lot of range damage that he's going to have to fight through.
If the Vulcans could get on the Hellborns, then everything changes. But for the time being, everything kind of acts as a buffer. And the move speed is so similar that pushing up on the turrets is a big problem. This is kind of why I think they put the charge and the cost on the evac for the mines to kind of zone a little bit. But if you don't have evacs to shuffle around your mech, like, I actually think you need drops to play mech in Stormgate, because these pushes are a great demonstration of an army that's very strong against everything except the Hellborns. But he's not committed enough to having some big anti-air force that he could you know, he can just completely turn it with one Hornet or something like that here. It's a very difficult situation because it's also just been PartinG playing like an absolute god and recognizing that the Hellborns are going to deal with the Vulcans very well. The other thing that you can do is, I mean, the Vulcan has the upgrade, so it can kind of do that jump, and it's not just for crushing trees and cinematics, but it also does 50 damage and stuns whenever it hits. So you can use that to reposition, pull away, or try to engage. But it's got a relatively long cooldown, so I just don't really like, you know, putting that as your primary source of mobility. It's just not consistent or stable enough. But he's trying to clear out a base that should be his, while a absolute Gig Alpha Omega Chad army knocks on his natural door, and that's just a tough spot to be in. A lot of Hornets though, so we're still seeing not a crazy amount of Gaunts. Maybe this is where you get something. Shadow Flyers try to get something done if they're not targeted down properly. It's a little bit there, and at least starting to clean this up, but as long as the Hellborns are here, the Vulcans will not be able to just stand and fight.
I mean, yeah, but this is turning into a pretty expensive trade out of PartinG. Hellborn are really good. They do 50 damage a shot. They're fantastic, and we're seeing what they're doing right now. Here's the thing, though. They cost a lot. They are tremendously expensive, and yes, PartinG has the map, and he's mining a ton. Losing 10 Hellborn, if that had happened, I guess, would still be very expensive. I thought we were going to go see the Hornets clean it up, but PartinG's reinforcements are doing a pretty nice... Honestly, I was right, then I was wrong, then I was right again. The Gaunts on the north side are not really being dealt, or are not really doing a ton. Well, we're going to see the Vulcans clean this up, and now these Hornets, including, by the way, a level 3 Hornet that just attacks so freaking fast, look at that, is going to clean up every single Hellborn. And this attack coming out of PartinG, yes, it did find space, it did push in, it did trade out a lot, but it was, again, pretty dang expensive, and more Shadow Flyers go down, 100 Therium down the drain, and look at what PartinG's reinforcing with. He's not reinforcing with Hellborns, he's not reinforcing with Weavers, he's reinforcing with Brutes. That shows where his Therium is right now. He's got the Dragon, 500 Therium into that thing. If Probe can knock that down, this game is still very possible. The Fiends are zoning him out of everything. It's so hard right now. Dragon on top as well is going to start to get targeted down. It's getting low, but there's Nefertiti right on top of it, and Probe is done. PartinG, well, he doesn't win in 6 minutes. Instead, he wins in 17 minutes with the entire map to his name.
That was amazing. And the absolute biggest thing I just want to just quickly mention is that I really love what you said. He just flooded units out, recognized this is that situation where your opponent has a couple of air units. Yeah, you can't do too much against them, but he did kill everything on the ground. So he just floods it out and says, yeah, let your 6 Hornets do it. And you can lose the game while that happens.
Yeah, pretty much. PartinG, there's a reason that PartinG has a 96% win rate on the ladder, just on multiple accounts. He's just insane. There's a reason he's the odds-on favorite.
And you hear it out loud, it's just, damn.
Like, we talk about, you know, professional RTS players being, they're good. They win 85% of the time against top players. Yeah, no. PartinG is... Can anyone stop this man, Nate? Killer Pigeon, can anyone stop this man?
I think we've still got an Infernal somewhere in the brackets. maybe that. Maybe it just needs to out him.
Let me just check under the couch.
Yeah. I think we've still got some on the other side, right? Like we've got Vortex and a laser who can like maybe solve the problem. The good news is we at least have one Vanguard left who can maybe try and stop his rampage. But no doubt, boys, PartinG looking absolutely phenomenal. I mean, first thing on my mind, Nate, is like, what's going on here with the Imps, right? They've already been nerfed once.
It's amazing. It's amazing. The thing is, the beauty of it is that what sets it up to be so well is that you feel like you need a specific response to deal with how fast the Doombringer comes. And that's always been a key part of every competitive game we've ever seen PartinG play in is never just about his build. It's about the fact that he is known for always taking the earliest aggressive opportunity. So when you playing against him, whether you get a good scout, whether you don't, you see him go for a fast expand, you're always nervous that something is coming. And I really feel like he just creates this chaos that the opposing player is just never able to get into a stable spot before that follow-up comes in.
BeoMulf, we've got a few people left to try and quell that chaos. Kiwi, and of course, first up. But, you know, if you look at the remaining 3 players to try and oppose PartinG, is there anyone here that you put as your MVP, the chaos master that can maybe quell this unquenchable beast?
You know, I would love to say yes, and I would love to say, yeah, you know, we look at a laser on the other side, we look at Kiwi, and it's like, okay, 9-game series coming in the finals. No. I don't. No one else in this tournament has the combination of insane ladder win rates. And again, he's played like 500 games on his main account. He's played a couple more on other accounts. They're all at insane win rates. No one combines that with the pro gamer experience. PartinG is an incredibly talented RTS player, certainly early in games. He invented the Soul Train back in StarCraft 2. You know, he has this ability not only to be a good micro player and a good macro player, as Nate was saying, but to invent the way to play. So incredible win rate, redefining the meta, this RTS history, and again, just tons of games. So he's seen what's happening. No one else in this tournament has those three things together. Or Laser's fantastic. He has not been grinding to the same amount. Kiwian's really good. He's not as good as the other players, like on a mechanical level that we think of. He was a GSL player 10 years ago. He comes back into a little bit. He's not on the level of a Laser or PartinG right now. No one else in this tournament combines those three things in the same way that PartinG does. So I'd love to say yes, KP, but the answer is, to me, a resounding no.
Do you want to maybe just write PartinG's name on your forehead now? I think you're pretty locked in there, buddy. All right, Nate, show me some hope here, right? Because, you know, I'm already looking at this and I'm seeing that Infernal's the only ones capable of getting 3-0s and best of 5s. We've got one Vanguard player left. I know you love your Atlases. Is there anything that can save them from PartinG?
I think if there's anything that we can say, it's that we have a little bit more to study from him now, right? We've seen a couple games played out. There are certainly things that maybe I wouldn't have the eye for, but a player like Kiwian can take advantage of. If there are takeaways, the Vulcan, it's not a bad deterrent to the big push part of what PartinG has done. Can that be worked into part of the defense or the build that Kiwian would want to do? Does he have a strategy where he thinks he could get something out like that to hold it while doing something else? Or does he just focus on, okay, I see that PartinG kind of stuck on lower tech units for a little bit until he had the whole map. That was the only time he made the Hellbringers. So maybe he sees some sort of window in the mid game where if he denies that first big push well enough, he can kind of use the tech disadvantage to turn it. But it's hard to say. I don't want to discredit PartinG because I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and I've been able to cast him and see him play for many years. But Kiwian is also just an absolutely sick grinder too. So if anybody can figure it out, I'm going to assume from the moment that last match ended and he knew he was going to end up playing PartinG, most likely he's probably just been in the lab. I've got to guess. He's just on nonstop on this because it's going to take something very well crafted, as you've all pointed out. Just the game volume PartinG has played gives him a mechanical edge that's really hard to ignore.